First, do no harm. Another tale of data loss. A friend of mine reached out the other day calling from a local computer repair desk where they had brought an external drive that appeared to have a lot of data that had been lost. They hoped the computer repair people could recover the information. They were calling me because things weren't going well. Naturally, they didn't have a recent backup, or this wouldn't really be video worthy. However, it's a lot more complicated than that. Honestly, it's almost as if these computer repair people went out of their way to destroy data. First, do no harm. I'm not going to name the repair shop because much of what I have is speculation, word of mouth, the results of my examining the external drive in question, and so forth. I really don't know what it was they were given to begin with. One of the most important steps in any data recovery effort is to make sure you're not making matters worse. Many recovery techniques, if performed improperly, or even if performed correctly, will actually alter the data stored on the drive in question. This then can overwrite other data that might be important for recovering other files. It's not a bad thing, it's just the nature of data recovery techniques. Knowing that, the first thing you should do is take steps to ensure that no matter what, you can always get back to where you were. The computer repair folks apparently failed to consider that. As a result, by the time I got to look at it, the disk had been manipulated extensively. I've been referring to it as having been stomped on. My chances of actually addressing the original problem were slim to none. The best I could hope for was some kind of partial recovery. So, the lead up. How'd we get here? The symptoms were actually really simple to begin with. 8 files suddenly appeared to be corrupt. They wouldn't open. That's it. 8 files out of several hundred or maybe a few thousand files stored on this external drive. My friend had been backing up manually, but the most recent was a couple of months ago. Naturally, there was important stuff on that drive that had been created or updated since then. When my friend got the drive back from the computer repair people, those 8 files were back. Yay. Except all the other files were gone. All of them. So they went back to the computer repair shop and said, hey, what happened? Followed by some variation of, get my files back. Now, the computer repair folks attempted data recovery on the drive. The result was not pretty. The previous folder structure was completely lost. There were many duplicates of the recovered files, which is not uncommon for file recovery. Many of the recovered files lost their file names, replaced by a generic file number type thing. Many files were incomplete or damaged, and many files were missing. And that's it. That's the best they could do. Only excuses were offered from that point. Anything not included in the above was lost. Okay, great. You say do no harm. What was the shop supposed to have done? Well, the repair shop should at least have asked, is this drive backed up? And taken appropriate action if the answer had been no. Heck, an experienced shop wouldn't even ask. They would assume the answer was no and take action anyway. Now, I've often pointed out that image backups on working systems make for a great checkpoint. No matter what you do after the backup, like installing or updating software or making other changes, you can always restore the backup and be back where you were with no harm done. You can see where I'm going with this. For data recovery, though, a simple image backup isn't really enough. That includes only the files on the disk and nothing else. What we need here is a clone, a bit-for-bit copy of the disk, including exactly how the data is laid out, as well as all the areas that claim to contain no data at all. It's those claims that hold the potential for recovery. So the first thing I did, I cloned the drive. Even though the repair folks had made a mess of things, this way I knew that no matter what, I wasn't going to make things worse. Now, there are a couple of caveats when it comes to cloning. Physical problems can prevent a clone from working. Then you'll need to decide at that point whether to risk proceeding with other techniques anyway or handing it over to a data recovery service. And there are rare occasions where there are problems that aren't really part of the clone. It's one of those things we think of a clone as being bit for bit identical. And depending on the cloning tool used, it usually is, but it's possible there are also sometimes some differences that can affect eventual recovery. Like I said, it's rare, but I mention it only because it's possible. Now, there's an interesting upside of performing a clone. If the clone works without error, then you know that the original disk's media is intact. There are no physical errors present. Even better, if you clone to a file, much like performing an image backup, you can then set aside the original disk completely. You can make additional copies of the clone drive, mount them as virtual drives, and run most data recovery tools on that copy rather than the original. That can even be faster in some cases. So yeah, like I said, I cloned the drive. So then I started to whip out tools, right? Start doing things with it. I started with Recover. I've mentioned it here before. I let it scan the entire drive and recover everything that it could. So besides the files recovered by the repair shop, it recovered a bunch more. The problem is that these files may have been the originals that we really want, or they could have been artifacts of their botched recovery efforts. Now, for reasons, honestly, I can't really explain, I felt like I could do better, or at least I could do more. So I ended up trying what is new to me, a data recovery tool called askleo Data Recovery. The initial scan and the first 2 gigabytes of data recovery are free, so it was a simple decision to at least give them a try. It scanned for a very long time, well over 24 hours, and when it was done, it listed many more files than Recover had. I ended up purchasing and I used it to copy and recover all of them. Once again, I don't know if these were originals or artifacts of the prior recovery attempts, but they represented more possibilities of recovered files. Okay, great. Now what? Regardless of the recovery tool used, the bottom line is that all I had was a collection of files that may or may not be damaged, files that may or may not have the correct file name, and no folder structure at all. Rather than try to sift through everything, something my friend could do later if so inclined, there was a specific file with a specific name and, more interestingly, specific content that was the single most valuable thing to recover. Now, all of the files with that name were incomplete and not useful. What would be useful would be to have a specific, somewhat unique string, say like sarsaparilla, that you could look for. My friend gave me an earlier copy of the document so that I had a few strings I could, and then search through all of the recovered files for that string. The problem? There are a variety of file types, and after recovery, the types might not also be correct. So we want to search all of them. Now, in the command line, we can use a tool called findstir to search for all occurrences of a string in a set of text files. In this case, that's not enough. I have a tool called PowerGrep. It's capable of understanding and searching through many, many different file types, not just text. I turned it loose, searching for a string that I knew would be in the document we were looking for. And again, a day later, I got my results. Lots of hits, none of them useful. At best, we found older versions of the document I'd been given, but not newer ones. So, partial success, but mostly failure. I gave my friend a hard disk containing all of the files I'd recovered. It included music and pictures and videos and more. All the things that you might expect. If they want to, they can look in this collection for other things that they later might realize are missing. But as for the most important document, I came up empty-handed. Now, I can't with any certainty say that I would have done a better job if I'd gotten the disk before the repair shop stomped on it. But I'd like to think so, because they stomped on it. I could have at least had a better chance of understanding exactly what started this sequence of events in the first place. All right, bottom line. Back up. I think you know that by now. And yes, my friend and I are working to set something up appropriate for their usage. More importantly, though, the unique takeaway here is that first, do no harm thought. If you're a repair shop, back up what your customers give you first. If you're taking a machine or a disk to a repair shop for data recovery of some sort, do what you can to back up the drive before you hand it over. If a traditional backup won't work, consider attempting a clone. But again, back up and back up regularly. For updates, for comments, for links related to this topic and more, visit askleo.com/175812. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.